my name's Tom Walker. Welcome to this special edition of That'll Be the Day. In this podcast, I'm going to be talking to people from a Gloucestershire charity who are about to refurbish a hall to be used by the local community. But before we hear from Artshape, if you like the music at the start of this podcast, it's a track called That'll Be the Day by the Liverpool band The Vow. But instead of playing a track by The Vow at the end of this podcast, we've got a specially commissioned poem by the poet Claire Smith to celebrate the start of the work and to encourage the community to get involved. When the charity Artshape acquired Trinity Hall in Tewksbury, I think it's fair to say, they realised the building was in need of extensive renovation. But how should the building look and feel once the refurbishment has been completed? Luckily for Artshape, they received some funding to consult local people who might want to use the building. Stay tuned to find out how you can get involved and have your say. There'll be details just before we hear Claire's poem. The podcast starts with me and Harriet from Artshape outside Trinity Hall.
Oh, it's quite stiff.
This is Harriet West, who's the senior project manager at Artshape, wrestling with the front door to get it open. You managed to do it.
It's a beautiful big old door, isn't it?
Before anything else, tell me about Artshape.
So Artshape, we're an access arts charity. We've been around about 30 years. We cover the whole of Gloucestershire, and we provide access to participation in the arts for those who face disabling barriers.
We've just come into the building. We're standing by the front door. Just describe what you can see inside.
Oh, it's a shell or a blank canvas, as we like to say. So it's a big hall. It's got a lovely roof, which is very open with beams and ironwork. The curtains have seen better days. They're kind of hot in tatters, but and the paint is layer upon layer of peeling off paint. It clearly hasn't been touched, and we think since 1978, because we can see a big sign at the back which says 1978 Grand Finale. And next year.
I know it's early days, but do you have any idea as to what this place will look like once you've finished?
Well, we want to retain some beautiful old features because, you know, that's what we're all about. But we would also like it to definitely be recognisable as an art creative space. So we don't want a sterile space. We want to commission disabled artists to have their input. But we also want it to be really warm and welcoming so people feel safe immediately they come in.
So what's the process going to be for deciding exactly what the building looks like once it's finished and feels like, atmosphere and all that kind of stuff?
So we're very lucky. We've got some funding to run a consultation project with people with lived experience in the area, and so we're trying to involve them right in the beginning. Hence this podcast. So we're inviting people to come and have a look round and offer their views to the architect, and we're thinking about all access issues, not just like mobility issues.
I'm actually just outside Trinity Hall, and with me is Liz Pesce, who started up the Tewksbury Access Forum about a year ago and has been very much involved in trying to make this building accessible. Liz, tell me what you're looking at the moment then. What's it like?
Okay, well, I've looked at this building for years, admiring it and hoping it wasn't going to fall to the ground. So I'm very happy that this is happening. At the moment, it is just a shell. It's got the most beautiful door and two sort of memorial stones and old memorial stones that I hope will be saved. Lovely window, very high roof. It's a beautiful building. I think there's going to be lots of promise and that for it. Lots to be done.
For you as a wheelchair user, Liz, what are the challenges for you of getting into this building right now?
So at the moment there are 2 or 3 steps, quite deep steps at the door, and there's a little pathway through the gate. Hopefully the gate's not going to be made too inaccessible.
What would you like to see change? Obviously you need to be able to get in and out of the building, but what else do you think, having known the building for a while, needs to change?
Obviously never been in it. It just needs to be accessible for everybody, take everybody into account. I think if there was a sensory space, that would be great. As one of the other people said, a quiet space, and then if if everywhere in it can be accessible for wheelchair users and visually impaired, and taking into account people with hearing issues, then that would be the perfect solution, I think.
You're a member of the Access Forum, so you'll have thought a lot about accessibility.
Yeah.
Are there any similar buildings here in Tewksbury that were at one time inaccessible that have been improved and are now accessible?
I think I don't know about inaccessible. I've only lived in Tewksbury since 2007, but a place like the Royal Hop Pole, they have done a very good job considering the age of the building, and that to include people. They've got an accessible toilet, there's a side entrance for people to get into, and the staff are really helpful. I would imagine it falls back on issues with sensory overload and things like that. And the Bell Pub Inn, they are also very, very old building, listed, and they have done everything they can do. There's a ramp up to the restaurant, an accessible toilet. They're very good.
When you think of architecture more generally, do you think there's been sufficient emphasis on the needs of wheelchair users and people with other disabilities?
No, not at all. I think it's a completely overlooked concept, which is what I'm trying to do with the forum, is to get people just to understand the concept of, you know, that disabled people also have money to spend when they come to Tewksbury, and if they can't get into, I don't know, 70% of the buildings, then that's a lot of money going down the drain.
That's good. I mean, if you can be dogmatic and kind of forward-thinking, and well, no, I don't mind.
That's the voice of George Legg from Miller Howard Workshop. He's been in a little informal meeting with some of the disabled people who've been talking to him about accessibility and how to make Trinity Hall more accessible. How was that meeting for you, George?
It was really good. I mean, it's a brilliant start to the project, I think, to have people with quite strong opinions tell you what they want. Normally people don't actually tell you what they want on a project until you get halfway through, and then you don't know what you're doing. So having people turn up and have a strong set of ideas about what they would like or things they'd like to see is great. It's really good.
I saw you taking lots of notes.
Yes. Well, I mean, for us, it's all about information gathering at the first stage, really. It's all about collecting as much information as possible, and then us doing a set of drawings, and then people commenting on them and going round in a kind of iterative loop. So we don't tend to go away, do a design, and that's the end. It's more about collecting information, showing people stuff, and it develops the brief as it goes.
Do you know Trinity Hall itself?
I have been there, yes. I've been there a few times.
Can you describe it to us? What does it look like at the moment?
It's a really beautiful red brick building with a beautiful frontage looking onto the high street. Internally, it's a sort of 3-storey space with a kind of big open vaulted ceiling. It's just a single room at the moment, and it looks like it's hasn't had very much love in the last few years, but it's got beautiful windows. It could be a really, really fantastic space for somebody, and it's a bit of a blank canvas as well, which is great.
I know you've worked on a couple of projects in the past in relation to accessibility. I think you've been working on a house for a woman who's a wheelchair user. So what are the challenges going to be for you and the people you're working with to make this accessible, to make it an accessible space?
I think the challenges are, I mean, there are obviously rules and regulations around wheelchair access and accessibility generally, but it's actually understanding the needs of the people and fitting those in with the kind of practical issues around getting into the people into the building and wayfinding and creating the kind of spaces that people want to be in but don't feel like they've been shaped around the accessibility specifically, that they are, they're brilliant, lovely spaces to be in, but they deal with everybody's needs at the same time. So
what will that entail from your point of view now? You've said you're going to it's an iterative process, you'll get the drawings. Where does it go from there?
So once we've done a set of initial ideas, probably just sketches really, it would be great to come back and talk to people about them and say, here's 2 or 3 options for what we're thinking about for the building. What do you think? Does this have we interpreted what you said correctly, or are there things that you hadn't thought about which seem kind of good, or what can we change and make better? So rather than us just siloing ourselves and going off and just designing, everybody's a bit more involved, which is the way we like to work.
One of the issues I heard being raised was physical access and the possibility of a ramp.
Yes.
Is that one of the things that, having looked at the building, you'll be definitely doing, or are there other ideas afoot?
I think probably the problem with ramps is they're incredibly long and they take up a lot of space. I think giving people access to upper levels, often we use lifts, but I think we just need to make sure that every space is welcoming and inclusive and everybody can use it in whatever way that might be. And I think the big thing is just to make the building feel like it belongs to everybody.
John Dixon is the president of the Tewksbury Historical Society and knows quite a lot about the background of Trinity Hall. John, just tell me more about the hall then.
Well, I'm interested because everybody wanted to think it was a synagogue for the Jewish people, right? So I've written the history of it because it is not a synagogue, and I can tell you it is actually a primitive Methodist hall. It was opened in 1873 by a group from Gloucester, and the primitive Methodists were the working class agricultural labourers, which my family was part of, and it believed very much in local preachers rather than ministers. And really the place became less important when the Methodist Church was opened at the Cross, which is still there today, which was a Wesleyan church. That was the middle class people, and of course it squeezed out the working classes of the primitives. So basically it ceased to be a primitive Methodist church. It was taken over for a time by Trinity Church, because it so happens it's next door but one to the vicarage of Holy Trinity, which is quite an evangelical church, always has been, rather unlike the Abbey, as it were. So it was taken over by then. It was opened in the 1930s for the unemployed, because we also had a very bad problem in the 20s and 30s. But it was only really used for playing cards, which the church disapproved of. So after the National Health Service was started in 1948, they took over the chapel and turned it into a storeroom for the hospital, which has now been knocked down and replaced by the Devereux Medical Centre, which had no use for this building, and that's why it's been rotting for the last 20 years.
There's some broken glass on the floor, so I'm just making sure that we're being a bit health and safety conscious.
Amy's from Art Shape. She's doing a bit of cleaning here, aren't you?
Yeah, doing a bit of sweeping.
There's a lot of broken glass here, isn't there?
There's a lot of broken glass on the floor, bits of ivy, dust, and I've just been outside the back of the hall. Where we're making a ramp, as it's not currently wheelchair accessible, so I'm making a ramp from the car park.
Zoe Partington is a disabled artist who's been commissioned to work with ArtShape on refurbishing this building. You're involving disabled people in this project, Zoe. Tell me exactly how that's working.
I think for me it's making sure that disabled people, across all impairment groups, can share what would work for them, how this building could be very welcoming to them, comfortable, for them to feel really happy in this space. And I think what we wanted to do was to make sure that disabled people might do that through poetry or through drawings, in different ways, not just how an architect would necessarily. It's not just about the legislation, because legislation doesn't always meet the needs of disabled people with hidden impairments, for example. So I think it's things like, the acoustics in the spaces. If you're going to have a workshop here, it's fantastic if you can have a space that works for a lot of different disabled people. So my idea was to have conversations with people and things like, let's record and have this podcast, to interview people so they can talk about what's important to them. So that was a lot of why I was brought in, and Lucy, who runs Art Shape, knows about my history and knows about the types of things I do. And I've always got that sort of creative head on, as well as the accessible head, Tom, that is there to, sometimes to bridge gaps that other people might not notice.
I think when you look at this building right now, the estate agents would describe it as having potential. There's a lot of work, in other words, that needs to be done here. How would you see this looking when it's finished?
It's hard to say, because I think we want everyone's perspectives in, but I think it's got to be warm, hasn't it? You've got to be able to control the lighting. You've got to think about the types of materials that you're going to use. So if an event is going on, that the sound isn't bouncing around the room and making it difficult for some people to hear. Lighting is so crucial to some people. So lighting can define the edge of the space, it can define steps, it can define doorways. So I think it's using it in a really clever way. A bit like they do in cinemas, but maybe a step further, that we use it in a artistic way as well. So for me, I think this building at the moment, it's a shell, but it's a really incredible shell. I mean, it's got the most lovely sort of wooden beamed ceiling. It's quite expansive. It's got, it could be 3 floors in a sense, because it's quite a large scale building inside. If we could combine different ways of putting mezzanine levels in and thinking about those as storage areas, workshops, kitchens, I think it's really important sometimes. And it is a bit of an access issue, that some disabled people need to just sit and relax, have a cup of tea, eat a sandwich. And sometimes I think we forget, because we're so sort of fixated on a wheelchair user getting into a space, or having colour and contrast on the steps, that we forget about all the other things. And I think we just need to be a bit more honest about that. And then buildings like this would work for a lot of people. I think a lot of pubs and cafes now, they've had all the furnishings stripped out of them. So if older people that might have sensory issues going on, so their hearing might be, slightly less, or their sight, and even in the pub we've just been in, the lighting levels were quite low. Very low, in fact. So you, as an older person, or like me as a visually impaired person, you can't. You're unsure about your stepping, and you're unsure. You're trying to carry a coffee from the machine across to the table, and I'm slightly worried about where I'm going. So I think things like that. Well, I noticed that because I tend to belt along at quite some speed normally, but when I was in there, I was being a lot more cautious. Yes, no, I was as well, and I think we need to try and make, if spaces are acoustically good and the lighting's good and the contrast is good, and not in a medicalised way, in a really clever way, then people will be able to have conversations. Older people won't feel like, you won't have this generation gap going on. So if you make a space that is difficult for some people, you'll tend to only get one age in there, and that's not what we want. We want this building to work for people of different ages, different backgrounds, because I think that, and there's an amazing architect, or was, called Lina Bobardi, that worked in Brazil, and she was really interested in artists working with her on the fabric of a building. So it might be that she would work with craft makers, or people to have tapestries created and hung on the walls, because it helps with the bounce of the sound. So I think, and beautiful wooden furniture, all these things actually help alleviate, hard sound in a space. Jane, you're a member of the Access Forum. Just describe what you can see now. We're just standing in front of the building.
A lot of challenges, actually, because we've got big iron gates which look very lovely, but there's quite an old pathway up to the front, and then 2 large stone steps into the building. But I think the idea is that maybe they'll be using the back entrance. But how we're going to get round to the back entrance, I'm not entirely sure at the moment, because it's not clear. Maybe if we walk a little further past the building, we might see. So it's got a very old wall.
Are these gates locked as well?
They're padlocked.
So we're not going to get in there?
Coming towards us, sorry. No, we're definitely not getting in there today. Okay,
let's have a wander around. So we're just walking past the building.
But I have a feeling that this isn't... No, this is part of the vicarage.
So we can't get through here either?
Get through there. So I'm not sure where they're thinking we're going to get in. We're going to have to wait for everyone. Looking up the side of the building, there's actually a step and another iron gate to get through, and then there's a path that's got ironwork sticking out, manhole covers and all sorts, so they're going to have quite a job to get it accessible again.
Now joined by two people who've got an interest in this building. They are Eve Calvert and Chris Devenold. Eve, tell me about yourself first.
Hello, I am a community arts practitioner with a basis mostly in theatre. I did my degree in musical theatre, but my primary focus these days is community and inclusivity.
Chris, tell me about yourself.
I belong to the University of the Third Age, the U3A, and I run a painting group on a Friday morning at the Roses Theatre, but an area like this would be fantastic.
I was going to ask you about that. Tell me about this area from your point of view. Once it's finished, could you imagine working in here?
Oh, I think so, yes. I think courses and things like that could be run in here as well, and I think to meet here it would be really good, particularly if they have the exhibition area which we could display our work and so forth.
And what about you, Eve, with your community practitioner head? Tell me about that.
I think this place would be a wonderful chance for young people to have a third space, which the town doesn't have much opportunity for, especially as all of the social spaces available for young people are primarily run as businesses rather than just as third spaces, where this has a real chance to be somewhere welcoming and open to young people to come and try something new or engage in their passions. I think this is a great chance for them to come, be themselves, and have a chance to connect with each other and other generations around town as well.
I hope this isn't too patronising to say, but you are a young person. It's good to have you here. Do you think young people, once this place is finished, is this the kind of place they'd come to?
I'd like to think so, yes. For the young people of Tewksbury, it doesn't seem like they have a lot of options at the moment, and I think anywhere that will open its arms to the young people of Tewksbury, I think is a great start.
And Chris, I hope you don't mind me saying, you would probably be described as an older person.
Certainly.
Do you imagine older people will want to come in a place like this once it's finished?
Oh yes, definitely. I think it's great potential. I think it's a gathering, it's a community, and getting people together like this, and I think it's amazing. I really do.
You were involved in the conversation with the architect. Were you able to speak to him, and what points were you making?
Yes, I was saying that I do leatherworking as well as art, and I do leatherworking at home, and I'm looking for areas where I can display my work and so forth. But I think there's great potential for courses in leatherwork and so forth.
And Eve, what were you saying to the architect?
I think for me it was mostly a case of listening to what other people are saying about the accessibility needs for the venue. As for me, I work with people of all access needs. It's important that we make sure that our venue is accessible to anyone that might want to use our venue, and that this is the most welcoming place that we can make it.
I guess the only thing to look at with the ramp is
Gradient.
if you're going, it's the grade. I mean, there's obviously gradients you have to stick to. And it's the length.
When you trained as an architect some years ago, to what extent was accessibility an issue for you on the course, and have things changed since then?
Accessibility was only very much touched on in the course. I mean, I trained as an architect 20 years ago, and it wasn't a big thing that people brought up. We did have a couple of days where we worked with tutors and people who had come in from outside and kind of considered accessibility issues, but it wasn't a kind of principal driver, and I think things have changed quite a lot in the last sort of 10 years.
Has architecture as a profession been a bit too slow to be inclusive, or do you think it was just rather inevitable that as society changed, architecture had to change as well?
It's interesting. In the architecture profession, I still don't think that accessibility is a key driver for people. I don't think, it is on people's radar, but I don't think it's a kind of a key thing that people talk about a lot. They talk about sustainability a lot. People talk about aesthetics, but people don't talk about accessibility in the same way. And I think that would be great. It'd be great if that kind of changed.
Stephen Smith has been attending courses at ArtShape for the last couple of years. Stephen describes himself as autistic. Stephen, what do you need from a building as an autistic person?
So for me, having a building in the centre of Tewksbury, which is a safe place to go, it's really going to be a game changer, because when I visit Tewksbury, and being autistic, if I get overwhelmed, I can have panic attacks and stuff like that. And having a safe, dry space to go that is friendly, it's a game changer.
Tell me what you mean by safe, Stephen. I mean, what does that concept actually involve?
So as an autistic adult, everyday sounds, noise is overwhelming, amount of people is overwhelming. So having somewhere where you can go, where it's really quiet, where you've got people that know you, where you can decompress, and it's, just enjoy the quietness and safe. That for me, it helps you stabilise and regain composure.
So what would this building need to look like? What will it need to feel like for you as an autistic person once it's completed?
So having a quiet space, almost like a sensory room type thing, that would be ideal. Being able to just come in and do some artwork, and just do some of the courses and stuff that I do over in Brockworth, but actually having that facility here in Tewksbury, which then also benefit other people as well.
You spoke to the architect
Yes.
this morning. What point were you making to him? I guess along similar lines?
Yes, along similar lines. So obviously a quiet space for neurodiverse people, which that also helps. But we also discussed about how he designs the building and what goes into it and things like this. And I find all that fascinating.
Do you think architecture is becoming increasingly aware of the needs of people like you, people who have autism, or is there still a long way to go?
I think there's still a long way to go, but after speaking to the architect this morning, you could definitely gain that he understood the needs of people with special needs, and I can definitely see it being built into buildings going forward.
So thank you to Stephen and everyone else who took part in this podcast. Now, if you want to have your say or find out more, the best way to do that is by emailing Harriet West from ArtShape. Harriet's email address is harriet@artshape.co.uk. That's harriet@artshape.co.uk, and Harriet is spelt Harriet. And now it's time for Claire Smith's wonderful poem.
Transformation, a prose poem in 3 parts. First of all, I'd like to thank Oliver Smith for all his help with writing this piece of work. Part 1, History, a perplexing past. After our perplexing treasure, the Mission Hall, Barton Street research team of John Dixon, Wendy Snary and Andrew Cogan. And this is how it begins. Foundation stones carved with the names Miss Wellington and Miss K. Potter. Bricks built on bricks upon bricks until the walls were made to stand as if reaching up in prayer. Congregations filled the hall, filled it with chiming hymns, sombre sermons, the new faith baptized. When religious gatherings were gone, groups of labourers gathered, singing folk songs, cracking jokes, smoking rolled tobacco, playing cards. They worshipped a different way. Times changed and the new health service bought it. Stored bed sheets, bedpans, piles of paperwork. This building saw Boer War and Great War, Christmases and Easters past, through mop fair and Jubilee, through steam age to diesel age, to the present day. Part 2. Today, a walkthrough. The building for sale board waits to be relabelled, hidden behind iron gates, black railings and brick. A rusted lock combination lost, we walk round the back, over uneven ground, tall grass is damp from the morning's dew, last autumn's rotted apples squelch under my feet as I navigate my way through the maze of the yard. Over the back wall, snowdrops flower, the first signs of spring. The building's starting to wake up after winter's sleep. We wrestle with another set of padlocks and keys. The blackened arch of the doorway separates outside from in. Secrets waiting. We give it a shove, step into the unknown. Under high ceilings and domed rafters, the message, 1978, grand finale, and next year, sprayed red on the opposite wall. Nature encroaches, elderberry and thistle rooted between lichened slabs. Ivy grows up the back, winding and twining over windows and doors. Deep green fingers spread like a hand, offering last year's tangle of deadened plants for spring's new nests. Broken glass and boards, mottled light through fractured panes, framed with ragged curtains, faded fuchsia. Diamond tiles, black and maroon, mark the entrance under carpets of dust. The building still and sleeping, a shell filled with promise. Part 3, the future, a vision for a creative health centre. Near Chance Street, a new chance, a space for everyone to flourish, a new planted garden, bulbs building flowers that grow and bloom in the warmth of the sun. Its light shines, welcoming us in. Under Gothic windows, a place to create, to write your own story, paint your own futures, dance a new world. A place for laughter, for friendships to cement, a place where it's okay not to be okay. Bare brick decorated with bright gouache paintings, with photos of magnifying treasures hidden in the mundane. Sculptured reliefs carved into clay. A place to be welcome with mugs of hot tea, beanbags for time out, sofas to share, windows refilled with stained glass, curtains refashioned with patchwork patterns, the front door opened for all, a space to feel calm, inspired, refreshed, long after it's closed. Thank you.